So today we're doing 10 proven ideas for a bird-friendly garden. Let's get started. Did you know that being around birds and listening to their songs can give you a feeling of well-being? The simple action can reduce anxiety, depression, and even paranoia. And that feeling of well-being can last for hours. In a study based on the European Quality of Life Survey, more diverse local bird communities were associated with increases in life satisfaction. And the effect wasn't small. In fact, it was similar to that seen from a similar percent increase in income. Who knew birds could make you so happy? Putting up a bird feeder is one of the first things that people think of when they say, okay, I want to welcome birds into our lives. One of the first things I did in my garden 12 years ago. But there are so many ways to enrich our experience of nature, whether you have a small deck or patio, live on acreage, or anything in between. Let's go beyond the bird feeder. We'll talk about those too. Today, when I was doing the research for this, I chose two websites that are just highly respected, really everything you need to know, research based. It's so many wonderful things that you can do with these two websites. And the first one is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And all of the links that we will be talking about today, you will get in your email. You will get a resource page. So when you're going through the webinar today, don't worry about trying to get the links. They will all be given to you when you get the recording. The second one is the National Audubon Society. Again, some wonderful information and great interactive guides, and one I use a lot for finding native plants for my area. Good database there. So today I'm dividing the website or the presentation into two separate sections. We've got 10 ideas, but the first one is in landscape design and how to create a bird-friendly yard just by using your landscape tools. We'll talk about what we can do in creating a natural habitat that supports birds. The second section will be human enrichments in the form of bird feeders, nest boxes, and water features, and then making the landscape a safe place for birds. And lastly, because I just read a fascinating book on hummingbird rescue, a special section on a few tips for healthy and happy hummers. From the soil under our feet to the insects, birds, and mammals and plants evolved in a way that regulates each species. And this complex web of interactions is called an ecosystem. And every player has an important part of the puzzle. So one of the first things we want to talk about is a term called nature-scaping as a way to encourage birds in our yard. What does it mean to nature-scape? Basically, you're landscaping with nature hand in hand, attracting and sustaining wildlife, using native and well-adapted plants, using your resources wisely, like how much water are you using, and then avoiding environmental pollution, like minimizing pesticides. It's regenerating biodiversity. So many of us live on lots that have been new houses built, and the land is usually scraped, and it destroys the ecosystem that our houses are built on. And so as we decide, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to make our houses look? The popular mow and blow landscape design, meaning manicured lawns and neatly clipped shrubs, are harmful to soil organisms and insects. The smooth green carpet of lawn is equivalent to a food desert for invertebrates, mammals, and birds. Nature-scaping is a lazy gardening technique. It's simple techniques that emulate nature. An abundance of irregularly sized plants spilling out of their boundaries make for good foraging spots and readily available shelter. Native plants are adapted to the light soil and moisture of your area so that you don't have to do a lot of maintenance in terms of, oh, I need to water, oh, I need to fertilize. They're evolved to be happy where they are. Uh, leave the leaves and the spent flowers and the dead woods. We sometimes refer to flower heads that have lost their petals as spent, but the fruit and seeds that remain are often important food for birds. Now, I often will deadhead my flowers, even things like my coneflowers that are good for birds later on in the year. But toward the fall, I let everything just go to seed so that they've got a nice supply of food for the winter. Reduce the need for watering, herbicides, and insecticides, and it requires less maintenance once it's established. Getting there is not necessarily a simple one and done thing. It takes a process of regenerating your landscape. The Scott Black, the executive director of the Zurich Society, was asked, "Well, how do we dedicate ourselves to invertebrate conservation? What can we do?" His answer was, "Put down the pruners, throttle back the mower. Less is more. A beautiful lawn is possible without maniacally manicuring every square inch. If you really want to invite insects into your yard, be a lazy gardener." This part appeals to me. You can still have your garden look great with edges of manicured lawns and the messiness out of the way, but it means less work so you don't have to manicure all your lawn, and you'll definitely get a lot more habitat. Getting to lazy gardening can be time and labor intensive. Ask anyone who's battling Armenian blackberries and English ivy. I say battling because the little buggers just keep coming back. But it's a matter of just a process. Just keep working at it, and eventually they're greatly diminished. Lazy gardening techniques equal leave the leaves. You have less raking. Reduced lawn, less mowing. Planting native, less fertilizing and watering. Dense vegetation equals less weeding. And all that gives you more time for bird watching. So if you're going to commit to adding native plants into your yard, where do you start? And this again, this is the Audubon Society and the native plant picker. And you can say, okay, this is where I live, and these are the plants that that are native to my yard, and I've got this kind of sunlight, and it will give you a list of native plants that would be good for your area, and then the birds that it supports. I chose to show you salal because it is one of the things that I have in my yard that is very successful, sometimes almost too successful. It really tends to be a little bit of a thug, but then the birds that it will attract. And so among the birds listed here, I can tell from personal experience that we also have dark-eyed juncos and spotted towhees. It's also a fabulous plant for bees. It blooms early, and it's very thicket forming. So we have lots of birds in and out, and the brush bunnies like to be there too. Part of the resistance to nature-scaping is that people say, oh, it looks messy. It's not well manicured. And I can meet resistance from neighbors who appreciate the mow and blow landscape. There are ways to tame your yard so that neighbors can get on board with the philosophy of land stewardship and compassionate gardening, where you're creating a wonderful habitat for all kinds of creatures. So some of the things is creating a line of sight where you've got a focal point in your landscaping. It's not just all a big jumble. Think pathways, a garden bench, a place for your eye to land. Space your plants wisely. If you mass the same species of plants in drifts, the pollinators like it, and it's appealing to the eye. And you can always err on the side of flowers. That makes neighbors very happy. Second strategy is to plant in layers. There are 5 layers of the landscape that we strive to achieve. The ground cover, which is your forbs, grasses, little herbaceous plants, the small and medium shrub layer, woody and less than 5 feet tall when mature. These all fit really well into some of our smaller lot sizes. Then you have the large shrub layer that can go between 5 and 20 feet when they're mature. So that takes up a lot of space. The understory tree canopy is less than 30 feet when they're mature, and then the overstory tree canopy over 30 feet tall when it's mature. And this is some of the birds that inhabit each landscape layer. Just a quick overview of what's going on there. I have a lot of very dense, small to medium shrub layer, and the bird activity is absolutely incredible. Also, these big tall trees are great for raptors, uh, the hawks and things, fan-tailed pigeons, and I have a heron that likes to hang up at the top of my fir tree and kind of scout for fish to eat from my pond. But it all is very important to support the different bird species. Here's a case study of creating landscape layers. So this is actually my house when I moved in November 2011. And we basically had 2 layers, kind of sort of grass, and then some shrubs. This is what it looks like as of last year. You can see we have all 5 layers. You've got the tall trees, which was actually there originally. But then we planted a lot of native plants with a few ornamentals mixed in. And then you can see the thicket, very happy place for birds all in the front there. The first picture there's a lot of green there. That was early in May. A few months later, this is what it looks like. So that's the whole flower thing, err on the side of flowers. And I've got a list of all of the things that we have in this one spot. What you don't see are also some bioswales that we've got in there as well. Third is shelter and nesting. And all creatures need a place to shelter and raise their young. And when you have all of the 5 landscape layers, those are naturally going to happen. But there are a couple of other strategies that we can use to make it even better for habitat. Incorporate dead wood, and creating bush piles, and don't be too tidy. And that kind of ties into the whole lazy gardener theme. So for shelter and nesting, dead wood is good. Some 85 species of North American birds live in or nest in existing holes, or they excavate holes in dead and dying trees. Insects that live in the decayed wood are an important food source for the birds also. Think about it. Nesting in a snag that also has a rich insect life is like living in a lovely neighborhood with wonderful restaurants right around the corner. Snags equal the same thing as like wildlife tree. Wildlife tree is kind of a nicer way to say it. They mean dead or dying trees, and they harbor lots of insects, but it's like a giant supermarket for birds. So many different kinds of insects that will live there, sap, beetles, spiders, ants, and then on the inner bark, larvae and insect pupae, carpenter ants, termites. And then the space between the partially detached bark of the tree is where small birds like nuthatches roost, and sometimes bats as well. One of the things you want to take a look at if you're thinking about keeping a snag in your yard, and that's kind of a choice that is sometimes challenging to make because they're not absolutely beautiful. Just make sure that it's safe. And I have an arborist out every couple of years to take a look at this tree in my yard. Um, so far, we're good. Then, if it has to be removed because it's not safe anymore, the arborist can take and cut off the top and make a nice natural looking snag. And then you can plant vines over it to make it look more attractive if this is something that is really in sight and going to bother you. Here's a great wildlife tree, wildlife condo. And you can see the different areas that the birds have used. So this is kind of a medium-sized hole for the northern flicker, little tiny hole for the chickadees and the house wrens, and then a pileated woodpecker hole right there. So this one tree in this kind of small area is providing 3 different nesting sites. Another part of shelter nesting is building a brush pile. When I first started my brush piles, I did not do it as well as this. I just kind of started in the fall. I would take prune branches and just lay them in a stack, and which has its purpose. But eventually it collapses down. So this is from the Audubon Society of Guide to Attracting Birds, and it's showing the 3 things at the top that show kind of how to make it last a little longer and be more useful for birds because it keeps the open space inside the brush pile. So again, this is going to be a place for invertebrates to hang out, breed, do their thing, and then a great place for small birds to be able to get in and shelter from cold and get away from predators. Brush piles are not the most gorgeous thing, but this winter I found this idea of creating, they call it a bug snug. The way it's constructed here is not going to be great for birds, but I think if you took and used longer twigs and piled them more vertically in the teepee section, and then again had a nice base of rocks or larger logs and creating a void at the bottom, it could be really good for birds and a little bit cuter than just a brush pile. Oh, and you could also use basically hollow stems, things long hollow stems like sunflower, milkweed often grows tall enough. You could use those, and it's a great place for bugs as well. Bees particularly like hollow stems to nest in. Great young. Okay, third one is don't be too tidy. Last winter's garden becomes this spring's design store. And I'd like to show this picture. This is the picture on the left here is my front door a couple of years ago. I have mason bee houses so people can see mason bees and learn all about them when they come to the door. But then this robin decided she was going to build a nest on top of that. Robins like to build on kind of shelf-like structures. And she just pulled up some of the most creative things. You can see the hydrangea that I had left from last year. I just cut it off and left it on the ground. Some iris stems, leaves along the side. It was so creative and beautiful. I was just dazzled by it. If you leave the flowers, again, birds are going to have seed sources. And then the fallen leaves harbor insects for ground-dwelling birds to eat. A lot of butterfly chrysalises, cocoons go in, they land on the ground and get covered up with leaves, and that's where they overwinter. So it's a really important habitat source for food and for regeneration. Speaking of invertebrate habitats, we've got some things to look at. A pollinator garden is one of the great ways to encourage invertebrates into your yard. And again, dead wood. Lots of creatures like to go into dead and rotting wood and lay their eggs and live, and it's just a great resource. This is from giant birch tree that was in our yard, and we thought, oh, well, let's leave this and rather than haul it away. And it's getting pretty rotten. It's been about 5 years now. It was too big to really move carefully, so I planted some things in it. But it's a tremendous source of for birds and invertebrates alike. Lots of moss for the bird nest and things. And it's slowly rotting away, and eventually it'll go away. But almost 80% of bird families include some insects in their diet. So you want to provide a lot of areas and support for insects in your yard. It takes 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to grow a clutch of chickadees to adulthood. Chickadees are pretty small. That's a lot of caterpillars. They're an important food source for at least 310 North American bird species. So if you're trying to encourage invertebrates and basically providing food sources and ecological function to your yard, pesticides are not necessarily a great idea. Um, you can see in this graphic the ways that pesticides, you've got a target thing, oh, I want to kill X invertebrate. And so you spray it, and then it kills the invertebrates by direct exposure, indirect exposure, and flowers, you know, the whole thing. But part of the interesting thing is that birds eat flowers as well. And so if you've sprayed pesticides on your flower, they're directly ingesting pesticides. They eat the invertebrates that have been poisoned by the pesticides. And they use the plant material to build their nest. And if it's contaminated with pesticides, they're building their house out of contaminated things. Neonicotinoids are a systemic pesticide that can last in soil for almost 3 years and in plant tissue itself for a year. It is one of the most prevalent pesticides throughout the world. And a single seed coated with a neonic could kill a songbird. When you go to a nursery, take a look at your plant tags. And if you see a plant tag that says this plant is protected from problematic aphids, whiteflies, whatever, set that down because it's been treated with a neonic. What you're looking for is a plant tag like the one on the right that says be safe, neonicotinoid safe. And those have been guaranteed to not have been treated with neonics. If there is nothing on the plant that says one way or the other, you can always ask the nursery staff if their plants have been treated with neonicotinoids. You can go to the Xerxes Society and take a look at their Buying Bee Safe Plants website. And then also pesticide.org will give you a list of nurseries that have pledged to not use neonicotinoids. Then we talk about integrated pest management. So that's a system where you decide exactly, do you need to do anything at all? And if you do, what is the safest way to deal with a pest? So when I walked out in the garden a while ago, years, if I saw a leaf like this, I would just go, oh no, this is terrible. This looks awful. Something's eating my plants. These days, with a little bit more education and interest in nature and bees and birds, I think, wow, this is great. I've got caterpillars eating my plants, and that means I've either got birds that are being fed or I've got butterflies and moths. Win. When it comes to a plant that looks like this, it's a little bit more disturbing and I get a little less excited. And then I think, okay, can I deal with this? And oftentimes, if I just step back and leave it alone, the birds will take care of it for me. So I choose to think, I look at a plant like the one in the middle and think, okay, we've got a bird buffet going on here. Come on, birds, take care of this for me. There is a great webinar from 10 Minute University on integrated pest management. And you can go and you can learn all about the safest way to deal with pests if they need to be dealt with at all. Because every day, birds are facing hungry mouths to feed. Remember, 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise one hatching of chickadees. That's a lot of work. One of the most exciting things that I've been researching is that orchards and vineyards, birds are outperforming pesticides. Now, worldwide, it's estimated that up to 67 million birds are killed each year by pesticides, but they also provide billions of dollars worth of insect and rodent control, plant pollination, and seed dispersal. Some studies are finding that pesticides actually reduce agricultural yields by decimating the birds, bats, butterflies, and beneficial invertebrates that keep pests in check. So across America and beyond, farmers and vineyards and orchard owners are enlisting wild birds, from raptors to songbirds, in a sustainable battle against pests. They erect nest boxes, kind of like the one you see in the picture here with the owl peeking out. And they install raptor perches or plant inviting native cover, all of which offer less expensive natural pest control than other traditional methods. Birds are environmentally benign, while poisons are not. And pest controlling birds stay on the job, while pesticides must be reapplied, and the effect of bird scaring balloons, hawk silhouettes, and propane cannons quickly wears off. Another way to help nature feed the birds is to plant keystone species. Keystone species are species that are basically super habitat for butterflies and moths. This is where they raise their young, they lay their eggs, and this is where the caterpillars happen. Now, not everybody has room to do a mighty oak in their yard, but there are some other plants that will work well on a deck in a pot, even if even if you've got a small space. Now, an oak will support 200 species of butterflies and moths. A willow, which you can often find a small willow that would work in a small area in your yard, will support 312 species of butterflies and moths. Prunus species, our native is bitter cherry, that will support 240 species of butterflies and moths. And that can easily go in a large pot or in a area by a patio. It's a great small size tree for any yard. The last thing we're going to talk about in the landscape section is year-round abundance. So when you're planting in layers, you're providing all of these different things. You've got berries for the fall and winter, seeds, flowers, all of the things that birds need to survive. And you're also giving thickets, brush piles, and evergreen trees and shrubs are great places to keep them safe through the winter. Again, choosing wisely is a great thing. You think, oh, I want something that looks good but has berries for the winter. So heavenly bamboo is everywhere, right? It's not heavenly. It's not bamboo. The beautiful berries persist throughout the winter, but they're toxic to birds, particularly cedar waxwings, who love the berries, but it can make them sick or even kill them. Don't buy that. As a replacement, plant this instead, evergreen huckleberry. It's evergreen, yeah. Has beautiful foliage in the spring. Pollinators love the flowers. You get berries if you're fast enough and get them before the birds, and no one dies. When you go to the nursery, make choices not only for neonic-free, but things that will support birds in a healthy way. You don't need a big space either. You can have birds on the balcony or on your deck. A lot of containers, you're not going to be able to plant an oak that's going to survive, but I've got maples. I've got Japanese maples on the deck in a 25-gallon pot. Another great choice would be bitter cherry, which is native, and that would grow well in a pot. Um, and you can even have nesting habitat. So here's a pot that last year we had dark-eyed junco, and the nest was right down there, and there's the bird that was nesting there. So in summary, you can do a lot to make a bird-friendly yard just by how you design your landscape. They work together to create a vibrant, biodiverse ecosystem where birds and plants and the insects that support them can all survive. Next, we're going to talk about human enrichments, things that we can add as humans that are not necessarily a plant or a rock or a dead wood. One of the most important things is just adding water. We'll talk about bird feeders and nest boxes, and then removing the hazards, and again, the healthy hummingbird habitat. Just add water. Water is one of the fastest ways to bring birds into your yard, especially if it's moving water. The sound of trickling water is just an incredible invitation to birds. But when you're doing your bird baths, make sure that it's shallow. They like puddles, not rivers to swim in. A slope side is great so that each bird can choose exactly the depth that they want. Look for ones that don't break and that are easily cleaned. Site them near shrubs and trees so that they've got places to go if a predator shows up. Um, in my area, I've got a big tree by my bird area, and the birds kind of hang out and wait their turn to see whose turn it is to take advantage of the bird bath. The sound of water is just irresistible to birds and to people too. Bird feeders, adventures in bird feeding. This is basically, I have to admit, I do not have a lot of bird feeders. I tend to be a lazy gardener and I don't want to maintain them as well as I should, but I've got a few that are right outside my kitchen window that I can see all the time, and then I can remind myself to take care of them. The One of the things that I had discovered, or I didn't discover, I was looking on the internet because I had some squirrels that were thinking about eating all the suet that I had planned. And so I thought, oh, I've heard, kind of old wives' tales, cayenne really works well. So I made this giant uh, batch of suet with a lot of cayenne in it. Now, cayenne's expensive. And so I went and bought a whole bunch of it online. I think I had like 10 pounds of it. And I mixed it all into the suet. But I did not do my research. And you can see how well that worked. So part of it is I've got a lot of cayenne left over, and I did not go ahead and do the research to find a great educational or organization that says yes, cayenne really works, and this is the percentage you need to do it. Still haven't figured that out, but I'd still have a lot of cayenne. So if anybody needs any, come see me. When you want to choose bird feeders, you have a wide variety of choices. And again, so this is Feeder Watch, which is a Cornell Lab site. And you can pick the region that you're in. You can decide what kind of food you want to feed, what kind of feeder that you're looking at. And if you click on all that, it will tell you what birds will be for that particular site and feeder and food. Really great resource. When you're looking at your feeder, there's a lot of choices into what you feed them. So this site has a quick guide to all the different seed types that are great for bird feeders. And then again about suet and mealworms and other bird foods. Things that you don't want to put in are leftovers, bacon drippings. These are all things that are safe to put in your suet feeders. The ideal bird feeder is sturdy enough to withstand winter weather and squirrels. It keeps seeds dry. It's easy to assemble. And most important, it's easy to clean. This is a webcam from the Cornell lab. And I'm obsessed actually. You can go and you can watch all the different birds, and it's incredible the different variety of birds that they have there. But I was wondering about feeding. I've heard like tray feeders are really difficult to clean. And so I showed up about 9 o'clock one morning, my time, or their time actually, to see how they refilled everything. I thought, well, first start of the day, this is what they'll do. And I found in the tray area, they've got these mats that they can just haul out and replace with clean ones. And it's a way to keep the bird feeders clean. And so you want to make sure that you do that kind of maintenance so that you're keeping your birds safe and healthy. Keep it clean. Next, we're going to talk about nest boxes and bird houses. And some of the things that you can do even without providing a nest box or a birdhouse is have these things available in your yard. And these again are all part of the things that you're going to have if you have nature, if you're following nature-scaping and lazy gardening. But like if you've got dry grass, you've got dead leaves, make sure that they're not coated with pesticides. Things that you don't want to provide are the things on the right here. Plastic strips, tinsel. You might see some of these things in a bird nest, but it's not advised. One of the things that people talk about is doing dryer lint, and that actually breaks down and gets crunchy pretty easily. And pet hair can have flea medications on it. So I'm just going to go through this part really quick. It's about choosing a nest box and how best way to do it. There's so many choices out there. You don't want to get something that's just cute. It needs to be functional as well. So you can choose the area that you live in, what your habitat is, and they will provide the right kind of nest box for your area and the birds that you want to attract. Make sure that whatever you purchase or build is well constructed. It keeps birds dry and it helps regulate temperatures, keeps out predators. And then the bird-specific entrance holes exclude unwanted occupants. So like starlings and house sparrows really like to come in and move into the nest boxes, and they will even kill the nestlings that are already there. So you want to try and avoid having them, and that you can do part of that by making holes the right size that will fit just the bird that you want and not the larger birds that will take over the nest. You also want to help the fledglings leave the nest. They need a little bit of roughness to their walls to be able to get out the hole. And then make sure that it's easy to place securely and that it's easy to clean. So if you're watching a nest that you've got at your house, there are some rules to follow to keep it safer. Don't check it early in the morning and avoid disturbing the nest during the first few days of incubation. So if you see the eggs, just leave it alone. Don't approach the nest when the young are ready to fledge, and that's usually 3 to 4 weeks after they've been hatched. Don't disturb it during bad weather, and don't check the nest at dusk or afterward, because you're going to disturb the mom or whoever is nesting on it. And then be careful not attracting nest predators. So basically, if you're going to look at a nest, don't go there and come back in the same path all the time, because there could be cats out there watching, predators that are kind of saying, oh, that human is interested in that area. I wonder what's there. And it helps them find the nest. So you go look at the nest and then wander off in a different way, like you're just on your way having a nice stroll. Roost boxes are another kind of a way to help, and it's basically like an upside down nest box in that the hole is at the bottom so that the birds can go in and then the warm air goes to the top and they can hang out up there. This is a brilliant design where you can take this door and flip it up in the summertime, in spring and summer, so that the hole is at the top and that's where they're going to nest at the bottom. And then the door flips back in the wintertime. And then there's pegs here so that they can roost and put a lot of birds. They tend to congregate for warmth, as you can see in the picture on the right here. Eliminating hazards, number 9. Cap open pipes. I had never thought about this. And they attract cavity nesting birds. And 27% of open pipes that they find actually contain dead birds in them because they go in looking for a nest site and then can't get out again. So this bluebird was trapped in this pipe that's 5 feet down, and some wonderful man worked really hard and managed to get it out. Happy ending to that story. But if you've got something like this on your property, you can put a rock on top of it, you can order a cap, or even wrap it with wire mesh, and that's going to keep the birds safer. Whoops. Corral the cat. Now this says eliminate hazards. I do not mean that we need to eliminate our cats, but we need to control them because predation by cats is the number 2 threat to birds after habitat loss. That's a lot of cats every year. So one of the things, or several of the things you can do, we're going to talk about Mickey. Mickey lives in my area, and his owner has a lot in a beautiful treed area. And this is a catio that she bought for him. And you can tell he really enjoys it. It's on wheels, so it can go on nice days where it's sunny but not too warm. He can be in the sun. In summertime, it goes in the shade. And then when she's out with him, she puts him on a leash, and he can enjoy the yard but still keep everything safe. Indoor cats live longer and healthier lives than cats that are allowed to go outside. There's so many different creative ways that people have made for catios, and some they're good for people too. So they're good for cats and good for birds, and you can build something even that you can all enjoy, your cat and you can enjoy the yard together. Window strikes are another really deadly thing. It's the 3rd threat to birds. Birds they don't have the architectural cues that we have for being able to tell what's safe to go into. So if they see a reflection in glass, basically that is habitat to them, and they will strike that. Bird strikes might go unnoticed because sometimes they'll just fly away or walk away, hide in the shrubs or something, but they could be fatally injured. And predators will also kind of hang out where birds are striking, and it's just kind of like a feast. So they have a bird strike and then they take the injured bird and off they go. So if you've got this, be aware. And there are several things that you can do. Break up the glass. One of the popular things recently was like, oh, put a silhouette of a predator. That's not going to work. Basically, the reflections need to be basically like 2 by 2 inches. This is one of my favorite ones, the little dots. It's quite attractive. And one of the really important things is that you have it, if you've got it at the right time. Like right now, birds are migrating. And so it's a really good time to have them. Birds, feeders, when you've got a lot of feeders around and you've got birds, they're more likely to have window strikes. Should be on the outside of the window, cover the entire window, and be easily visible, and larger than 1/4 inch. This is a system that the Cornell lab is using right outside their area, their building. And it's paracords. It's called Zen wind curtains. It's really simple, and they actually give you how to make these. And it's basically just long paracords strung at 4 inches apart. Very simple, very unobtrusive. And this is the system I'm going to use for that window that I just showed you. Last one we're going to talk about is having the lights out. So birds, as they pass over brightly lit cities, they get the sky glow kind of um, obscures the stars, their navigation, and it lures them into urban areas. And in especially like low ceiling or foggy conditions, if there's a lighted area, the birds are all going to go there. And that's not where they need to be. Sometimes they mill about, sometimes even collide with one another near a lighted structure. And they found that if the lights turned off, the birds recover quickly and move on their way. So right now, you want to be sure that in the evening, like I said, this is peak migration season. It's next week in our area, uh, Portland area. Dim the lights at night. And if you have landscape lights, make them go so they point down, and use warm hued lights in the 25 Kelvin to 3000 Kelvin. If you've got a spotlight, put it on a motion sensor and turn out the lights from 11 to 6. A gathering of hummingbirds, number 10. We're going to talk about hummingbird care. It's called a bouquet, a glittering, a hover, a shimmer, a tune of hummingbirds. A gathering of crows is called the murder of crows. This is so much nicer. Hummingbirds are homebodies. We have Annis hummingbirds year-round in the Portland area, the Willamette Valley, because they've got increased feeders and the temperature's getting warmer. But we had this major cold streak the past couple of years, actually. We've had ice storm and just super, super cold temperatures. And it was a panic, like all over Facebook, that the birds are dying. What happens is they go into torpor. And there was all this panic. What should we do? And do this, do that. And fortunately, the Audubon Society stepped in and gave some tips on what to do in supremely cold weather for the hummingbirds. Hummingbirds have a normal temperature of 107 degrees and a heart rate of 1200 beats per minute. Incredible. When temperatures get really cold, they lower their metabolism by as much as 95% and their temperature by 50%. So they do this often in cold weather. And when it gets really, really cold, they go into a very deep torpor. And this picture shows the difference. So this is a hummingbird that's at normal temperature. This is light torpor, and this is deep torpor. And it's basically like a deep hibernation where they're protecting themselves. And this is how they protect themselves in cold weather. They're usually fine. Let them be. You can even see them hanging upside down sometimes from a bird feeder. They're in torpor. This is what they do to protect themselves. Don't try and save them unless they're visibly injured. Hummingbirds in freezing weather use a shallow bird feeder, which you can heat more easily. Keep it so basically you can bring it at night and put it in. You can get a heater that will keep it warm all the time. Do not have exposed metal parts during sub-zero temperatures because the birds can stick to it. And if any body part is frozen, do not try and remove it. You can use like warm water to thaw it out, but if you try and move it, you can injure or kill the hummingbird. Keep your feeder clean, and then put up smaller feeders in multiple locations. And that way you've got smaller feeders that are easier to keep warm by bringing them in and out. This is just a quick thing on hummingbird nests because they're so sweet, and talking about they use spider webs. A hummingbird nest is about the size of a jet puff marshmallow. They're really tiny, but as you can see, the fledglings get bigger, And so the spider webs allow the nest to stretch to accommodate the bigger birds as they grow bigger. They're not so big. And then keep your hummingbird feeders clean once a week at least. Sugar water, change that 2 to 3 times a week. Place the feeders in the shade so that it keeps the water cool, and use a water moat to protect ant guards. During the spring and summer, it takes a lot more maintenance because the sugar water gets hot and it gets bacteria and fungal uh, growth, and that's really dangerous for the hummingbirds. So you can plant flowers and they'll be totally happy and you won't have to care for the feeders. So for human enrichment, add water, use bird feeders, nest boxes, remove hazards, and provide healthy hummingbird habitat. The big picture is there's a benefit to biodiversity, that the choices you make in your gardening matter, and that you want to be a good steward of the land. Many ways to invite birds into your yard. What are you going to do? My goal this year is to make a kestrel box because I'm fascinated with them and I want to try a nest box. And so that's the next step that I'm going to take. Have you got something in mind? You've got a resource list here. Again, you'll be getting that. And then 2 books that I found really, the Audubon Society Guide to Attracting Birds was really useful. And then just for a really fun, inspirational, fascinating read, The Fastest Things on Wing, all about hummingbirds. I learned so much. Okay, and that's where we're going.
I'm not sure if I'm here.
I see your name.
I know. All of a sudden, different things happened on my computer, and I'm not sure exactly what happened here. So, um,
We'll just chat.
I guess we'll just chat here. Yes, I can see a few other people, but not myself. All right.
Okay.
That was really great, Leah. I really did enjoy that.
Thank
And we do
you.
have a few questions. You talked about different willow species. Ruth wanted to know, is curly willow also one that is good to
You know,
use?
I do not know that. I don't know. That would be something that I would go on like the Audubon native plant website and take a look. I'm not sure that a curly willow is native, so I can't
Okay.
answer that question, but if she wants to send it in, I will research that and answer it. How's that?
Okay. Sounds good. Um, Meredith said she has a Niger feeder, the little
Yeah.
Niger seeds.
Uh-huh.
She has it in the sun, and all the goldfinches really like it, but she wants to
Oh
know
yeah.
if she should put another one into the shade for other types of birds.
Um, I don't think that really matters because shade is more of a water thing, like for baths and for hummingbird feeders. Um, if she wants to, that's fine. Um, the more the better, as long as she's willing to take care of them. Hi, Jane. I see you now.
Found it. I found myself finally.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, okay. I'm not sure who this is, but they have a bird bath and it's hanging from the roof, and they say they don't have any birds ever come to it. So they want some suggestions on how or what they should do in regards to this hanging bird bath.
Yeah, I would bring that down lower. If it's hanging from the roof, I'm not sure number one, how easy it is to clean. Um, put it somewhere near more like trees or shrubs, that kind of thing, where they've got a chance to come in and out. And then if you could add some kind of, again, the trickling sound, and you can easily do that like with a little water pump, but you can also do it with a solar. They have those little solar pumps. You just have
Right.
to make sure that they're wide enough, because I have one, and when it gets windy, it just blows all the water out. So, so
That
I would,
happened to me
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
would put it down lower, maybe, 2 feet from the ground or so, because birds don't, water is not up high, right? You know,
Right.
it's down low, and so that's going to
Right.
be more natural for them.
Okay. All right. Here's a interesting one. How do you discourage starlings?
That's a really good one. If you're having nest boxes, you again could make the hole the right size.
Mhm.
And that would be something that I would go on to Cornell Lab and take a look at. I did
Okay.
not have time to research that myself. I think
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things that it's like blackberries. They're there and you're constantly fighting against them. But yeah, go to Cornell and and look up starlings and it will give you ways to manage that as
Okay.
much as possible.